All right, everyone. Thanks for coming out. We're going to get started in just a moment. I think we have a couple more people coming to the space. All right, and just as everyone's arriving, I just want to remind people of the programs coming up this week. Of course, Medicine Buddha tomorrow night. And then Saturday, our first Medicine Buddha online retreat, 10 to 5 Eastern time. And Eric will put the registration link up for that. Hope you can join me next Saturday. Also this week, I began my program called The Gathering for people who identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. And that's starting Tuesday. And that's a space that will be kind of co-facilitated. Well, I guess I'm facilitating it, but I'm going to be in dialogue with a couple people. And I think that's going to be really wonderful. Dialogue, so I'm excited about that. And I'm sure there's maybe something else that I am forgetting about. Also retreats. We have a lot of retreats coming up, in-person retreats coming up in the fall. We have in August, Wonderwell, I'll be at Wonderwell Retreat Center up in New Hampshire, but that retreat has already been booked, sold out, but I think there's some online streaming opportunities that you can sign up for. Also, if you're in the Southeast, I will be at Southern Dharma Retreat Center in December. And that is a tradition, actually a very traditional retreat, second weekend in December that I do every year. And that's just going up now, Southern Dharma Retreat Center, and this is the second weekend in December. And I'll be doing, so that's near Asheville, North Carolina, and I'll be doing a one-day retreat for activists in Asheville. And then Wednesday, that's a Tuesday, and Wednesday begins the retreat. So you can do a whole week with me pretty much, if you would like. So anyway, that's all up on websites and this and that. So feel free to take a look at that. I think most of everyone's here, I guess. So that's something else I wanted to announce as well, but I'll probably remember it by the end of our session. But anyway, welcome everyone. I especially want to welcome those who are new to practice with me, in case there are people who are new to practice. I feel like I have to always give a qualifier, some kind of warning when people show up to me for the first time. So I'm in so many different venues now, and I think a different part of me is expressed in different venues and different places. And so when people get into spaces like this, where I just don't hold back, I have to kind of ease people into it. You have to be like, well, this isn't calm. Like that's calm is one thing that's happening, right? Or what else? Or like social media is another thing that happens, or love and rage is one thing that happens, or, whatever, but these are the practices. When I think about these foundational practices, like practicing with the mother, right? These come out of really these core practices that I've been trained in, I've been initiated into. And of course, I'm deeply influenced by Tantra, but I also understand that Tantra is a system that is being reflected in multiple systems of practice, right? It's just not in Buddhist Tantra, but and other paths, that I'm connected to. So Tantra is also a magic tradition as well. And for some of you who've been with me for a little bit, you know that I've been in this process of reclaiming magic. And we've talked a little bit in Medicine Buddha sessions about reclaiming ancestral magic. And this is something really important, I think, for all of us right now as we move deeper into this kind of like systematic breakdown, is that we have to actually go back and reclaim um, what sometimes I call the gifts of the ancestors, of our ancestors, right? Um, an ancestor practice, um, as many of you already know, is extremely important to me. And I think it has to become extremely important to all of us, regardless of our ancestry, regardless of if we know who our ancestors are or not, regardless of how we feel about our ancestors. Like we have to actually reclaim or reestablish a connection to ancestors, because ancestor support and magic are imperative right now. And as I say over and over again, we have to call in the help that we need right now, right? All the help. Like we can't be in the world thinking that we're going to get through the apocalypse on our own. Like we have to call in our help. We have to belong and rely on communities. Like we have to rely on the unseen world. Um, everyone's into abolition right now. Um, and like anything that becomes like super trendy, like we kind of like disregard the core practices of abolition. So abolition isn't just defunding the police, which is what it's turned into in many circles. Abolition is actually about redreaming the world, like reorganizing the world so we don't have to rely on institutions, like police. We don't have to rely on the state. We don't have to experience state violence, right? We don't have to experience, all these ways in which systems are being supported, institutions are thriving off of these systems that are really just about violence, right? It's about control and rigidity. Abolition is actually about going back and actually asking ourselves, what does freedom really mean, right? And what does it mean to be free? The abolition that I practice and study is rooted in anti-slavery abolition work. And of course, that's the work of so many people, so many groups, um, including the Quakers, the radical Quakers, abolitionist leaders like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, um, the suffragettes, and to an extent, as well. But really, like the root of early abolition is actually rooted in having a connection to the unseen world, right? It's rooted in actually allowing the unseen world to organize with us, right? Which is really intense concept to think about. Um, but Harriet Tubman did the things that she did because that she was connected to the unseen world, right? This isn't like these people. Well, I mean, in a way, people did have these extraordinary abilities and qualities, right? Um, but what I mean to say, I think, is that like people just weren't doing this work alone. They were connected, like they were connected to communities, organizing communities. They were connected to the unseen world. They were connected to deities and saints and ancestors, who were still concerned with the seen world. Of course, the seen world, the form, the physical world, the form world, is reflected in the unseen world. Sometimes I call the unseen world the spirit world. Sometimes I call it the bardo. Um, but I kind of stay with the unseen world, right? Of course, the world is unseen for most of us, but there are those of us who do actually see and feel and sense into the unseen world quite strongly as well. So much of the practice that I'm engaging in these days is actually helping us to develop a stronger connection to the unseen world, right? And for me, the practice of the mother is one of those foundational um, practices that actually helps me to connect to this cosmic consciousness, this feminine Shakti filled, expressed consciousness of the unseen world, actually of both the unseen world and the seen world, right? I practice the expression of the mother. I practice in the expression of the father. We haven't done a lot of formal, well, rather I haven't taught a lot of formal practice in the father as I'm doing it in my own private practice, but I will be offering that pretty soon, you know. But when I think about the mother, right, for those of us coming out of Buddhism, we're really familiar often with Tara, right? Dr. Rachel Wooten offers a Tara class every month based upon her book, which I have. I don't have it with me to show you, but she offers that once a month in Bhumi Sparsha, and that's a really important kind of introduction and exploration of Tara. But Tara is an expression of this universal consciousness, this feminine consciousness, right? And the mother is an expression of space itself, right? So when we're getting into space, we're getting into the expression of the mother. So when we talk about Tara, often the Tibetan Buddhist texts describe Tara as the mother of all the Buddhas. Now, does that mean that Tara gave birth to all the Buddhas? No. What it means is that there can be nothing without space for something to arise, right? So that's what we're actually talking. When we say Tara has given birth to all the Buddhas in Tibetan Buddhism, what we're saying is that like space is the most important factor to give rise to anything, right? And so space becomes personified as the mother, right? And the mother, this ultimate cosmic consciousness, this feminine consciousness, has actually, on the ultimate level, really not much to do with how we understand gender and sexuality in the relative. It has nothing to do with our own mothers that we were raised with, and that these kind of things kind of get in the way of us touching into the energy of the mother, because we want to, and this is actually for those of us coming out of Tibetan Buddhism, like this is something that many of us have been programmed with, right? In Tibetan Buddhism, it's like we get to Tara, or we get to loving kindness, we get to metta practice through the love of our actual mothers, our guardians, our caretakers. And that's traditional in Tibetan cultures, and that has become traditional in Tibetan Buddhism. But of course, you come to a culture like many of us come from, particularly, Western cultures, to an extent. Many of us have had very difficult relationships with our mothers, right? And that was never the case with me, so I never quite identified with that particular kind of trauma, but it is a real trauma that a lot of us struggle with, right? And so when we come to a practice like the mother or practice in Tara, like we're having to confront the woundedness from our actual relationships, with our mothers, right? And mother too, not necessarily being relegated to like women, but when we talk about the mother again, we're talking about any being who has been a caretaker for us, right? Where I come from, the communities that I come from, you know, the mother like isn't necessarily a woman as we traditionally may understand. The mother is the one who's taking care of you, so that can be um, the mother of a house, which can be a male identified, male centered person, right? Um, of course, I always think about Big Frida, as well as being, a mother, as well. Um, so we have to, like, I say all this because I really want us to start thinking about how to disrupt really rigid thinking about mothering, you know, that mothering isn't relegated to the feminine, that mothering is something that happens across different identity locations, different gender expressions, and so forth, right? And that's how we can start really moving past the woundedness around the mothering that we've received to touch into the essence of the mother. Um, and I will, often use words like Shakti, right? Shakti, comes out of like Vedic studies, Vedic practices. Sometimes we label those as Hinduism. We don't know what Hinduism is because it's a colonialist thing. So, but also the issue is that we're trying to name experiences that just transcend language as well. So we're always getting into trouble, right? So we have to rely on the experience rather than the language. And this is why for some of us, we'll get stuck in the scholarship of practice, and won't do the work to extend into an actual practice of experience, like experiencing what these things are that we've been studying and reading about, right? Coming out of like the academic study of Buddhism, I really understood that there are people who are just really brilliant around the scholarship of Buddhism, for example, but who were just like miserable people, right? And I was like, how can you be that miserable, right? And be like one of the leading scholars in Buddhism, in the world, right? I'm not gonna get any more specifics. I don't want y'all tracking down people, but like I just like there has to be a balance here, right? I know the experiences can be scary, right? Because the experiences are actually taking us out of this really comfortable space that we've created around who we think we are. And my strongest experiences practicing with the mother, particularly one of my strongest experiences that introduced me to Kali Ma, which I may teach down the road, but when I first really got introduced to Kali Ma, Mother Kali, it was this experience of just complete disruption, and that's space. Like that is the expression of space. It's the blessing of space to actually unroot us, out of fixations, out of rigidity, and actually deliver us into this fluidity, into the space, which can be terrifying, you know, right? Since, because it's space, with space, we don't, there's nothing to hang on to. There's nothing to feel grounded in. Space is just space. It will transcend the limitations of identity and who we think we are, right? And this is why I'm always helping us to understand that when we get into the essence of the mother, we're losing a sense of who we are and the relative. Right? And that's something that over time you learn to hold, as you move deeper into other practices, like, oh, there's this experience of space, openness, fluidity, right? Which is so counterintuitive, right, to my relationship to self, the sense of self, right, and ego. Like, this is who I am, right? But that's a trap, saying that this is who I am, because that's not who we are. Whatever I think I am isn't true, because what I am isn't a thought. What I am is an experience. It's an experience of complete freedom, right? So I'm often looked at and considered like one of these leading thinkers in identity and spirituality. I don't know how that happened because I don't understand any of it to begin with. But what I do understand is that I have to be careful about who I think I am in this relative experience, because it will block me from experiencing my ultimate self in practice, or my ultimate self when I actually transition out of this physical world, right, into the spirit world. You talk about the spirit world, like, there are countless beings who are vehemently holding on to their lives, or holding on to an expression of their physical bodies, which is just energetic body, right? And so when you're transitioning into the spirit world, the bardo, like, that's the moment, and this is in line with Tibetan texts as well. This is the moment where you like actually become the mother, if that's been your practice, instead of trying to hold on to who you thought you were. And it's hard to let go of who you thought you were in life if you've never practiced and been in relationship to who you are ultimately, which is simply an expression of space, emptiness, this fundamental energy of creation. To get back to that, to rest in that, which is the nature of all phenomena, right? To get back to that is to experience true liberation. And this isn't to say that we're supposed to like let go of identities and identity locations and everything. That's not the truth, and that's not actually in line with Buddhism and Buddhist Tantra. Right? Buddhist Tantra actually says that nothing is supposed to be erased. We're not trying to erase anything. Right? We're not trying to get rid of anything. Getting enlightened is not like going through a house and getting rid of the junk. Like, enlightenment is walking to a home and saying, you know what, this is fine. Like, I get what this is. And then once you get what it is, then you can enter into responsiveness and you say, oh, I'm going to choose to do something different now. That's Buddhism. Like Buddhism, tantric, I want to be specific, tantric Buddhism, is really about how do we first just accept everything. And people confuse that teaching and think, oh, when I accept something, I just kind of let it be there and I don't do anything with it. So that becomes a teaching of apathy or a teaching of bypassing. And that's not really it, right? To change something, you have to first accept it. You have to accept that something is happening, that something is present, right? And a lot of us haven't done that fundamental work of saying this is happening. To acknowledge that something's happening means that we have to go through the heartbreak of that thing being present. And that's what we're trying to stay away from. Like, we don't want to deal with the heartbreak. Like, we don't want to deal with the truth of the world right now. You know, we don't want to deal with like the reality that, particularly with those of us who are living in the United States, that we're moving into, you know, really intense totalitarianism, fascism, you know. And the more we push that reality away, the least likely we'll be able to intervene and to disrupt what's happening. You know, because as you think you're trying to change things, what you're actually doing is running away from the pain. And that running away is going to keep you busy, and then you're going to get confused and say, well, this running away, this busyness is actually the work, and it's not the work. It's a distraction. So when I accept something, I say, yeah, this is happening. This is absolutely happening. And then I have to tend to the pain, the heartbreak, the sorrow, the despair that arises from that, the hopelessness. Those experiences will be even more intense if we're not connected to the support of the unseen world. And not just the unseen world, but if we're not connected to this deep trust that the world is just an illusion. The world is this illusion, a stream that's arising. This is not my home, you know. And when we're not able to see, when we're not able to touch into the unseen world, when we're not able to actually think about the nature of what we're experiencing, then that becomes a kind of fundamentalism that we get stuck in, a rigidity. And although this actually happens, like there's definitely fundamental kind of like there's a fundamental right-wing movement in Buddhism, not just in American Buddhism, but in other countries of origin. You see that really clearly, and which is not in line with Buddhism. So I ask myself, okay, what's really happening? And of course, these people who are these right-wing fundamental Buddhists are actually not practitioners. They're actually scholars. See, I said it. Again, when you have no practice to expand upon the scholarship becomes rigid and becomes a source of harm for yourself and for others. You know, and Buddhism becomes a religion. Like one of the differences between Buddhism and other religions, you know, there's many differences, of course, but in line with what we're talking about now, like one of the core differences is that Buddhism is about fluidity, movement, change. You know, it's about understanding that what's happening now is just an illusion that we have to actually develop a relationship with. Right? And it's not about getting comfortable, right? It's about choosing discomfort in order to enter into the gate of the experience of the nature of everything. Like you're never going to get free being comfortable. You know? So when I think about the mother, coming back to the mother, coming back to this really just core fundamental practice of the mother, what is the experience of the mother? I think, again, first and foremost, it's the experience of space. You know, it's the experience of opening. When you open, however, you're going to start holding space for everything that you're continually pushing away, right? Which is the pain, the heartbreak, the trauma, and so forth. So when people start practicing, moving into these kinds of practices, they'll, you know, often be like, oh, this feels like why am I suffering more? You're not suffering more. You're just finally paying attention because the space is opening. And that's the blessing. The space is the blessing here. like the space, the openness, the fluidity, right? And spaciousness is the antithesis to self, to ego fixation, to be particular, right? The more contracted we get, like contraction means in this case reactivity. So the more I'm reacting to things, the less spacious I will feel, right? And so this is why it's so important in my work that we move from response to, we remove from reactivity, we move from reactivity to responsiveness, to choose my response, to choose how to act, right? Not just to react, but to choose a response. That is the sign of space, to choose a response. I think ultimately, like we want to get into a practice over time where we're able to sit and just feel the love of many expressions, but particularly feeling the love of the mother. And what does that feel like? You know? And I think that the practice for most of us is actually understanding what that experience is. Because the love of the mother can be quite subtle. It's quite a subtle experience, very nuanced as well. It feels like sometimes it's like the phenomenal world, the whole of all phenomena. It feels like all phenomena is just wanting you to get free. It's like a cheerleading situation, like the phenomenal world is cheerleading for you. And this is in line with practices in Tibetan Buddhism, particularly Mahamudra, which is really just a meditation system and a philosophy that's really about understanding and experiencing the nature of reality. And one of the tenets, the teachings of Mahamudra is that the phenomenal world is always trying to get you free, but we misunderstand the phenomenal world. Like we take the phenomenal world as being rigid and solid, instead of taking the phenomenal world as being a doorway into the ultimate, a doorway into the mother. And now my work around the father aspect is really about form and how we confuse the form. We get confused about form, right? Form is only an invitation into the ultimate, not a limitation where we stop and we say, oh, this is the world, there's nothing else here. Actually, that's a misunderstanding of the form. And therefore, there's a misunderstanding of the father. The father is form that opens into the spaciousness of the mother. And the mother and the father reflect each other. Of course, coming together, we have the ultimate experience, which we could call God, but the expression of the essence itself, right? So to begin practice, I know some of you have already began your practice. But just beginning just to come back just into the space that you're practicing in, And I want you to acknowledge that you have a body. Like I'm not asking you to go into the body, but just saying I have a body. There's a physical body here. Let's start there. Let's start with the basics. And maybe even beginning to notice your seat under you, and the weight of your body making contact with the seat. Now, as you notice the seat rising to hold you, we can even begin to connect to the expression of the mother right here in this very moment. The seat rising to hold us is an expression of the care of the seat. The seat is tending to us. Because the care of the mother can be expressed in limitless forms. Anytime we feel cared for by a person, by a thing, anytime we feel cared for is an expression of the care of the mother. This ultimate consciousness, this expression really of love. And we begin to also connect to the earth under us. And many cultures identify the earth as the mother as well, Mother Gaia, Uima. So maybe connecting to the care of the earth, of the mother expressed as the earth. And maybe when we connect to the earth in this way, we begin to touch into the experiences of the earth. And again, the practice is about space, is about holding, reducing reactivity. So for some of us, when we connect to the physical earth, to the land, and to the consciousness of the land and the earth, we may touch into discomfort, to suffering. We may touch into the trauma the earth may be experiencing right now, and the earth is experiencing trauma in the same way we experience trauma. But the thing about the earth is that the earth may experience trauma. The earth doesn't identify with the trauma. Like earth consciousness doesn't say, this is what I am. That's what we do. So as we connect to the earth, right, we may touch into that discomfort, that trauma, but we also have to connect to how the earth does not identify with that suffering. That suffering is just an experience. Just as our trauma is an experience. Right. So when we're able to say experiences, like this is an experience, this isn't who I am, that phrase begins to open up space. And that's when we begin, for some of us, to get the first experience of the mother, when everything becomes an experience, not fundamentally who I am. We can let the earth teach us that the earth is not trauma, but there is and are experiences of trauma within the consciousness of the earth. Just just a little while longer here. Just again, connecting to the earth, holding space with the earth, connecting to how there may be experiences of suffering in the earth, but that's not what the earth is. In the same way, we experience discomfort in all kinds of ways. But those experiences, those feelings, aren't who we are. Your experiences, they're just clouds passing through the sky. We notice, and we just allow these basic experiences just to be there. And as we move deeper into the practice, it's so important that we kind of let go of trying to figure out who and what the mother is, right, in the practice. To let go of that, because that's distracting, but to allow the essence, the consciousness of the mother to lead us deeper into this expression of space and responsiveness. Experience the mother instead of always trying to label everything as this or that. Right. And that's, not just the practice of the mother, but that's so many other practices when we're working with any kind of wisdom deity or ultimate deity, wisdom-based deity, or worldly deity, right? It's allowing the essence, the core expression of that deity to awaken within you and around you. So in this case, practicing with the mother and any mother, be it Tara, Kali, Mary Magdalene, Ostara, whomever, you know, mother in whatever tradition, this expression of space is the essence of any deity expressing themselves from the experience of the mother. So again, beginning to relate to everything is just an experience. This isn't who I am. No matter how strong the experience is, it's just an experience. So I want to move just a little deeper into the practice. And always, when we're moving deeper into practices, I really encourage you to stay anywhere that feels appropriate for you. Like if you feel like where we're at now is great for you, that is really tending to something, fine. Please, please, please make a choice to stay there or to go anywhere you need to be. So always knowing that as we move deeper and deeper into practice. If you would like to go further, and before we even do that, because this is actually an important part of the practice. So you can practice with your eyes opened or closed, but actually I think as we move deeper into the practice, having your eyes closed would be really helpful for the practice. It usually doesn't matter, but I think this time it actually could enhance the practice. So as we move deeper into the practice, I invite you to begin to call in to your space um, all the beings who love you, who want you to be free, who care about you. And you can move through the 7 homecomings practice from love and rage, or you can just open your mind and just invite any being who loves you, right? Any being, living or dead, any spirit, deity, angel, saint, pet, the phenomenal world, as a benefactor as well. Nature, plants, all the elements as well are sources of care and love for us. And you just begin to feel them. You don't have to see anything, but I want you actually just to feel the energy of care in you and around you. So an image, visualization that you could work with, maybe is to imagine that you're kind of floating or in this galaxy of stars and just stars around you. You can begin to feel these stars within you. And these stars, as they radiate light, are actually radiating care, because these stars are actually benefactors. They're the beings who love us. And so they're just like radiating, twinkling this light of care in us and around us. And for those of us who practice Tara, we know that Tara means star. So all these stars that we're imagining can actually be expressions of Tara herself. Sparkling, glowing expressions of light and care, radiating into the darkness of what we could call contraction or reactivity or numbness or bypassing or hate, whatever it may be for you, that this energy of care from the stars, these benefactors, begins to light up and warm up this darkness. And so everything is just glowing, radiating, full of light. And my body becomes full of light. But the space around me becomes full of light. That we move deeper into the consciousness of the mother here. And this is a moment where we allow ourselves just to rest within this expression of care, within the energy of care, within the light of this care. We're visualizing this. Just to be held by this energy, to rest within this energy. I'm just gonna just stay here for just one more minute before we go a little deeper. We're just sitting, resting, lying, opening to this light, this energy. So we're just gonna go a little further from here. And I want to start just working a little bit with the breath, right? And if you're not working with the breath right now, then I'm going to give another set of instructions um, once I offer the breath instructions. But we're going to just move into a simple pranayama, and this pranayama is called it's a internal exhalation pranayama. And pranayama means breath work, um, breath practice. When we work with breath. Um, in Tantra, because the breath, because energy, fundamental life force energy, Shakti even, rides the breath. Right? So as we breathe, we're actually breathing through these life force energies, like prana, like Shakti as well. So if you're working with the breath, first, I just encourage you to imagine that you're beginning to breathe in and out of the heart center. The heart center just being right in the middle of the upper chest. So imagine breath moving in and out of the heart center. So as you're imagining breathing into the heart center, I want you to imagine that you're breathing in the light and care into your heart center. So the light and care, the benefactors, the stars around you, that you're breathing the essence of that into the heart center. And if you're not working with the breath, imagine just that energy just moving into the heart center for now. Okay? Now, as you're breathing this energy into the heart center, right, I invite you now to imagine that you're holding that energy in the heart center after the inhale, right? So you're breathing into the heart center and imagine holding that energy in the heart center, stopping the breath and beginning to feel this energy in the heart center intensify as well. So you're awakening the heart center, you're opening the heart center. And when you're ready, exhaling, but exhaling the intensified energy throughout the body instead of inhaling out, right? So your body, this energy begins to be circulated through the body, feeling that energy going all the way down to your toes, the top of your head, to the tips of your fingers, everywhere, to every cell, every atom, every tissue, organ in the body, every bone, muscle. We keep doing that. So inhaling into the heart center, holding the breath in the heart center for as long as you want. And then when you're ready, releasing that energy, feeling that intensified energy, which is Shakti by now, really radiating through the body. And if you're not working with the breath, again, imagine just this energy moving to the heart center, filling the heart center. And then slowly that energy begins to release from the heart center throughout the body. And you don't have to use the breath to work with that. So either way is fine. So you may feel a little lightheaded. If that's the case, just come back to a normal breath, a natural breath for you. Maybe taking a break, doing a little bit of movement, regrounding. It's because we're doing significant energy shifts here. And again, this is the energetic underpinnings of releasing more and more into the space. So moving from contraction to opening in space. And again, just as a reminder, we can go back to any part of the practice that felt stabilizing for us at any time. But in this space, no matter where we are, I wonder if we can just experience the consciousness of the mother, experiencing it not by thinking about the consciousness, just experience it through being, connecting, allowing yourself to open, to expand. And again, we're not bypassing anything. It's just that the space is opening to hold everything. And that's one of the expressions of the mother. So we're gonna just start coming out of the practice now. And this is particularly important for those of you who are just really deep in this right now. Right? And we begin, by just returning our attention back to the seat, back to the weight of our bodies, making contact with the seat. So allowing the energy of our attention and our awareness to drop down close to the earth. Right? Allowing this sensation of the body and the seat to actually ground us, bring us back into this timeline. And again, connecting to the earth under us. And whenever you're struggling to feel grounded, lighting incense, so keeping something close by, a very natural incense, like this is Palo Santos. So something like very woody, very like earthy, not anything synthetic, is really important. And this also helps with the smelling. I forget the more scientific term, but that kind of sensory of smelling is really grounding as well. So feeling the weight of the body, the seat under you, connecting to the earth. Beginning to notice, again, sounds around you as well. So letting go, of this visualization of stars and so forth, letting that kind of fade into the mind. Right, you can continue just by awakening the body, just doing some gentle movement to awaken the body. Right. So we just have a few minutes left. And I can probably just take like maybe 2 questions if anyone has questions. You can type those into the chat box as well. For those of you who, I feel like some of you did some really intense work. Really, movement is really good. Walking, water, hydration. That's also really, when you're moving, when you're working a lot with energy, you have to stay hydrated because the physical body and the energy body are in this kind of, I would say, a tug of war. Sometimes the energy body and the physical body are just pulling on each other, right? Because they're reflections of each other. So whatever happens to our physical bodies will impact our energy bodies, right? And this is one of the foundational tenets of yoga, for instance, asana practice, right? The physical body impacts the energetic body, and vice versa. The energy body impacts the physical body. We have a question. I guess people can, Eric, and they can unmute. Just come on. Something. Renee. I see Renee.
Hey, Rod. Yeah, I just wonder if you would speak a little bit to this piece of healing the mother wound.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so much grief come up for me in this practice today.
Yeah.
Whew. And some of it just spending time with my own mother and really grieving the care and love that I didn't get in that relationship. And just anything that you can offer around that process, especially for us as, as queers, and having not received love and care because of our gender and sexual, expression.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Renee, for that question. And again, this is a core issue that many of us really have to work through when we're getting into this. Because what I'm teaching, if you've not noticed, I'm teaching essence practice. Like I'm taking people into these really nuanced experiences, right? To get there, however, you're going to have to move through a lot of this old woundedness, right? Because we have to do the work to understand and experience that the suffering that we've survived and the relative is actually a doorway into the ultimate expression of these experiences. So another way of saying that is that, like, the pain that I've experienced from my mother is actually how I get into the liberatory love of the cosmic mother, right? And a lot of that is having to understand that a lot of it is forgiveness, actually. It's saying that, like, I didn't get these fundamental things from this particular relationship, right? And the healing that I have to do is to let go of those expectations, right? To let go of that past narrative of not having enough, and then open to the reality that I actually do have enough, right? To go through that pain to touch into this kind of cosmic expression of the mother, which is always holding. That I'm actually not being hurt by the mother, right? But actually I'm being hurt by the ways in which people struggle to embody the mother in relationships with others. And to see that and to let that go, that's a hard practice. And of course, that's the practice of forgiving. But again, we're not trying to erase anything, but we're trying to disrupt our fixation on the narrative, of what we didn't get, and open to the reality that we are getting what we need from this higher expression this cosmic expression of the mother, and allow that experience of the cosmic expression of the mother to begin to hold the woundedness, of the pain from our relative relationships with beings. Right. And initially, it's a lot of us having to just go back through this pain from relationships and offering. We didn't quite do this today. I often do this though in other practices, that this pain that comes up is something I offer to the mother. Like if I had a really difficult relationship with, my caretaking mother in this life, like if I have that woundedness, then this woundedness is something that I begin to offer into the consciousness of the mother over and over again. And that's really one of the principal ways we begin to work with this, with the suffering that comes up initially in our practice. And this is what I had to go through is too. I never, I have an excellent relationship with my mother, not such a great relationship with my father, right? So that's the relationship where I've invested a lot of energy in, right? So this mother practice has come really easily for me, but I still have woundedness around caretaking that all, regardless, can be offered into the mother, practice of the mother. Is that helpful, Renee?
Yeah, and today I was just practicing with letting that grief be held.
Yeah.
In the space of the mother, and it's also helpful the piece around like the expression of the mother being space.
Yeah,
I think that's a piece that is helping me create some safety in even entering into the space of the mother. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, this is just really common for many of us. I think this is why so many people avoid mother practice like this, because it's what you have to deal with, right? And again, tantra in general it's about going into the shadow. Like there's no other way. Like if you're not doing shadow work, you're not doing tantric practice. Like it's about creating pathways back into the stuff that we're always avoiding, right? And it's, it just takes gentleness and time and patience. It takes really trusting this expression of the mother, right? And again, I also had another huge advantage, because I had, a female teacher who I've been studying, mother practices exclusively with, and in a Shakti-centered lineage, and it's helped me a lot. I never really understood Tara mother practice until I began to understand that the pain around mothering and being parented and cared and being taken care of was actually a doorway into this larger experience, this more expansive experience of the mother. Right. I remember the first time my heart really broke in a practice like this. And I said, oh, this is it. This is the doorway. I couldn't get to the mother because I was holding on to all this pain, because I was using the pain to define who I was. And I had to let go of it. And when I let go of it, my heart broke. This is the space just opened up and the mother was just there. I said, oh, this is what I've been looking for. This is it. I'm not the pain, I'm the space. Right? And I had to have the courage to let go of that pain. And I think for many of us, queer and trans and non-binary and gender expressive, there's, especially now, right? There's such intense violence that we've survived, that we continue to survive, right? But what we're called to do, and not just queer and trans and gender non-binary people, but all of us who are experiencing oppression and limitations to personal freedom right now, which is a lot of us right now. Like, we can't get consumed by the pain and the trauma of this violence, right? Like, we have to keep touching into this larger expression of freedom, because that's the only way we're gonna survive. That's the only way we have survived, in the past. We have to hold everything, right? But to hold everything means that we have to do this level of processing through how we continue to identify with the pain instead of identifying with the space and the love and the compassion. That's who I am. If I have to say I'm anything, I have to say that I'm space. And this is one quick question here. Would it make sense to understand the love that we have for ourselves in the grief is an expression of inner experience of constant mother? Yes, absolutely. I'll just leave you with this. I know we're past time, so I'll just leave you with this, like, one last thing. I may continue this tomorrow in Medicine Builder if you're able to join us. You have to let the mother love you. Like, and that's going to leave you with that. You have to, I think the most important part of the practice actually is allowing yourself to be loved and cared for. So when I'm having you just rest within this field of care, like, that's the most important part here. Like, we have to allow ourselves to be cared for. When no one else, when no living being is caring for us, it's the mother who's always caring for us. So always hold that. Like, at the end of the day, that's where I retreat into, is the space itself that's always there holding me. Right. And to learn to deeply absorb love, take in love, is the key here. And all you can do is this. Like, you can just sit and just do practice of receiving love, and that's gonna help you do, that's gonna impact everything else without even having the intention. Like, it's gonna impact everything. If we can just open to love, literally so many things will fall into place afterwards. Okay.
I just want to say one thing that's humorous. I was typing something to somebody yesterday and I meant to write llama rod. And instead I wrote mama rod. And I thought that's the best Jungian slip I've ever come up with. So.
That's what Justin's kids call me. Because I mean, I've known them since, like, before. I mean, I've known Justin's kids for, like, before they were, when they were born. And so they just call me that now. And they're like, what, 7? I think 7 and 8 now. I forget. Yeah. They're like, Mama Rod.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this is Rachel, everyone. Rachel leads our Tara group every month as well. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we're going to continue some of these conversations in Medicine Buddha. Again, we have all the events, whole day of practice next Saturday with Char. Now, next Saturday, I'll be going through, like, some general topics in Tantra. So I think it could be really helpful, even if you're not interested in Medicine Buddha, just to come and participate in that. Anyway, it's good to see everyone, and I'll see some of you tomorrow for Medicine Buddha. Okay, everyone, thank you. Please be well.